Your photography equipment is insured, right? Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Well, I want to talk a little bit about insuring your photography equipment, and what brought this to mind is a video that came up on YouTube about a week or so ago, maybe a little bit more. A photographer who had to ship his Leica, his over $11,000 Leica, in for warranty repair. And so what he did was he boxed it up according to Leica's instructions and took it to the UPS store. And UPS store generated the label, and so he left it there with them. He paid for second-day shipping. And then, like 2 or 3 days later, he called Leica. I guess 3 days later, he called Leica, and they never received it. And so then he went and he tracked it using the tracking number, and it never got on the truck. So the label was created, but never got picked up by UPS. I'm not going to go into the details about this. I'm linking to the video in the description, so check that video out. But it brought to mind, we all have this expensive equipment. It needs to be insured, and luckily he had insurance. He was a member of the Professional Photographers of America, and part of that membership is you get equipment insurance, I think up to a certain amount, but it was over the $11,500 for the Leica. And I was a member at one time before I kind of went back into my selling laboratory instrumentation position. I never had to use it. Actually, PPA, Professional Photographers of America, also have legal services. And I did use their legal services once, probably something I'll talk about in a different video. It's kind of an interesting story. If you do not have that kind of insurance, you can get business insurance. I have business insurance, and this whole thing got me thinking, hey, I need to check and make sure that if I ship a piece of equipment out, that it's covered for theft or loss while it's out there. So I called my agent and said, hey, can you check on this for me? Because he wasn't sure. He checked. He got back to me within an hour, and he says, yeah, you're good. You're covered for losses up to $25,000 when you ship something. So I don't own anything that's going to cost that much, so it's all good. What are you going to do if you're not, if you're a hobbyist and you have all of this expensive equipment? Generally, your equipment is not going to be covered by your homeowner's or your renter's insurance. You're going to have to buy a special policy for that. And there are personal article policies, which are mostly for jewelry, and you might want to check with your insurance company to see if you can have your photo equipment put onto that kind of a policy. At one time, we had an insurance company that it was really strange. They did insure my photography equipment, but the policy was called an inland marine policy. So I guess for boaters, but somehow that covered photography equipment. So you really want to make sure that you have some sort of insurance that's going to cover you for this kind of loss. And you want to make sure that it covers loss during shipping. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But I want to also talk about some things that I think this photographer probably could have done to catch the issue a lot quicker. And one of the things that I do is, and I use the UPS store. I have used the same UPS store for over 25 years, 2 different owners. They had to move twice, so 3 different locations. I have never had an issue, but I know the owner very well. She is a member of the Print Chamber of Commerce. We've known each other for as long as she's owned that store, and I just don't feel like I would have any issues. However, when I drop something off, I always check tracking later in the day. So I check to make sure that after the label was created, it actually got onto a truck. And if I'm shipping something on eBay, it's usually United States Postal Service. So when I sell on eBay, but then I take the package to the post office. And the small post office here in Forest Park, I can go in there. There's usually never a line. I hand it to the agent and I get a receipt. And same thing, later in the day, I track it, just make sure that it's on its way. because you want to catch it as soon as possible. In the instance of what happened to this guy, perhaps if he'd caught it really early, he would have been able to get that package, find it before whatever happened. And I'll tell you my opinion with what happened to him. And I don't know if there's been a follow-up on this, but there should be a police investigation. I mean, we're talking about grand theft here, but it does sound, if you watch the video, like something hinky happened. Now, as to why you want to have insurance for when you're shipping something, you don't want to rely on the shipper's insurance, okay? And I know this from personal experience. So, a little story for you. In my laboratory instrumentation sales career, this happened in about 2007, 2008. I sold an imaging system that it was about a 30 to 40,000 imaging system. So it was it was an imager for imaging what are called chemiluminescent Western blots. I'll put a link to an article that explains what those are. And it was a local university here. I was the one, after delivery, who would go in and set this thing up, hook it up to a computer, install the software, make sure it was working fine, give a real quick tutorial on how to use it. Dealing with people in laboratories who are pretty smart and for the most part can figure out how things work. But what I would do is give them a real quick training on how to get going with it, and then I'd do a follow-up, maybe a few weeks later after they've used it for a while, and then, kind of do a whole, training session of an hour or two. But I digress. So in this instance, at this local university, they get in touch with me, the instrument's been delivered, I go over there, and the box was like up against the bench that they were going to have this instrument sitting on, the lab bench. And I pop it open. And this thing is a big piece of equipment. I mean, it weighed about 150 pounds, which back in those days, I could actually lift that up onto the bench. Not so sure about today. Anyway, I open this thing up. And when I open up the box and I pull off the styrofoam packing, there was like this foam packing around the top of the instrument, also around the bottom, it was just very well packed. I pull it off and I look, and the entire top of this instrument is caved in. It just caved in, and I'm like, what the hell happened? And then I look and I see there's a hole in the side of the box. And so I turn it around and I look at the hole, and they put a forklift through it. The thing was on a pallet, so you could actually lift it with a forklift. So whoever the forklift operator was that punched a hole right through this thing, bam, hit this $30,000 to $40,000 instrument, trashed it, and I had to go to the customer. I said, well, this isn't going to work. Got to call my office, talk to my boss, go, this thing is trashed. Did to pack it back up, tape it together, tape over the hole, and arrange to have it picked up. And I don't want to mention the shipper, but you probably can sense who it was. So a couple of days later, there's a conference call involved, following up on this event. And by this time, my company has been in touch with the shipper. And so we're on this conference call, and whoever got in touch with this company says, well, they're saying that we packed it wrong, and which was ridiculous. I mean, they were trying to skip out. They were trying to not have to cover this piece of equipment. And which, we packed it the way it was supposed to be packed. No matter how well you pack something, you're not going to keep a forklift from punching a hole through whatever is inside the box. So my boss says, get the representative in here now, like as soon as possible. Long story short, they ended up covering the damage to that instrument. Now, back to photography equipment. If you're a company like I worked for that was spending thousands and thousands of dollars shipping stuff every year, you got a lot of weight to go to a company and say, no. you're going to cover this. We, however, as individuals, don't quite have that leverage. So that is why you really want to have insurance that covers your equipment independent of the shipper's insurance. Because I guarantee you that there's a high likelihood that if something happens, they're going to try not to cover it. So, what have we learned today? Insure your equipment. If you are a professional, you obviously need to have business insurance. You need to make sure your business insurance covers loss in shipping. If you are a hobbyist and you don't have business insurance, you have to find a way to get your equipment covered, whether it's personal articles policy or some other sort of rider on your renters or homeowners insurance. So, so if this was helpful, useful to you, please bop that like button. If you have any questions, comments, leave them down below. I'm Todd Banner. I will see you next time.